Well, hey everyone, it is a beautiful winter day here in East Tennessee, and today I'm going to show you how to get the highest quality and value out of your timber trees, which starts with early formative pruning. Now, when we're talking about creating veneer quality logs, what we're looking for is a tree like the one behind me here. What we want to see is a form like this. We want the tree to have a large diameter. We want it to be very straight. We want it to be free of branches all the way up till way high in the crown. We want to try and avoid any splits in the stems, twisted stems, excess branches, especially down low, any knots in the wood, any defects, hollows, anything like that. And when we look at a tree like this one behind me, a veneer quality log can fetch about 10 times the price of the cheapest tree, which is one that's going to be destined for firewood or being chipped up. So it's really important to try and grow your trees in a way that's going to maximize your profits one day. All right, now like I said, it is wintertime, and we like to do both our planting and our pruning in the wintertime because the plants are dormant, and so it's much less stressful for the plants to do these things. So for today's project, all we're going to need is a simple pair of hand pruners and a larger 2-inch shear, and that should be plenty for anything you're doing in the first couple of years. Now, even doing this in the wintertime, pruning a tree is not entirely benign. So with the goal of trying to form these young trees into the highest quality veneer logs that we can, I want to show you a tree that really doesn't require a whole lot of pruning at this point. So this tree right here has a long straight stem with a good strong leader all the way to the top. It's got nice uniform branching all the way around. It no longer requires any kind of support or staking. It's healthy. This is a tree that really doesn't need much pruning, and if you don't need to prune a tree, don't prune it. So we're going to let this one go, and we're going to go look at some other examples. Now, the basic principle is we want to correct any major flaws or defects now while this tree is still young. So this cherry tree behind me, it's already got a fork in it, and we don't want 2 trunks. So we're going to go ahead and fix that now because it's easy to do while this thing is still a seedling. So I've lifted up the tree guard, and you can see that the branching actually occurs pretty low on the trunk here. So what we're going to do is target prune it, and we're going to cut right across here at a small angle. Now this ridge here represents the beginning of the vasculature of the trunk, so you don't want to cut into that. We're going to do what's called a target pruning. We're going to start just up at the beginning of that ridge and then cut down and away. If you cut into that ridge, you can expose the vasculature and cause disease in the tree. So that's pretty much what you're looking for. And now we've just got the one stem. But the next thing I don't particularly like about this is this tree doesn't really have a clear leader. We really want to have one central stem that's going up, and you can see that it's just kind of got several stems that are all the same length going around. So we need to pick one, and I'm going to pick the one that's right in the middle here. And what I'm going to do is trim back some of these other ones so that we have a clear leader. So we'll do that. And I'm going to tip some of the other ones off just so that it's well established who's the boss. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually tie it up to that pole. This way it's nice and straight. And next year this tree should look a whole lot better. And here it is now with a elastic tie holding it to the pole. So this tree now has a much better form, and we've set it up for success. Now here's one that's kind of a mess. So I think something happened to this one. Probably something broke off, and the tree has now split in a million different directions and actually sent up a bunch of suckers. There's a whole new tree starting right down here. So the goal for a tree like this is, number one, we need to remove all the suckers from around the ground. Those all got to go. And then we need to, again, pick one of these to be a leader. And I'm probably going to go again with this one right here in the middle because it's coming straight up from the center. So if we choose this one to be our leader, we'll secure it to the conduit and basically trim the other ones back to establish this as the true leader. We should have a much better form for next year. So again, we're just trying to establish that nice conical shape with a single well-defined leader, because otherwise this thing was going to grow into a bush. Here's another example of something that can go wrong. So this tree has no branching, and It would be nice if this would grow into an 80-foot log that had no branches, but that's not what happens. What'll happen is the wind will push on this thing, it'll bend, it'll eventually break off, and I tend to see this most with my white poplars. So what I'm actually going to do with this one is I'm just going to trim the last couple of buds off the top, and that will encourage some branching, and it will readily establish a new leader, so that will improve the shape quite a bit. So this right here is another tree that wants to be a bush. This is a red mulberry, and red mulberries are not typically grown for commercial timber in this country, but they actually make an excellent hardwood. They're extremely tough, very durable. They make excellent flooring, and it's a pretty wood. But they do naturally want to be a bit of a shrub, so you have to train them to be more of a tree. And if you do that, you will be rewarded by some of the best lumber you can get. So we're going to trim this one back to one major trunk. We're going to trim all these branches back to a nice pyramidal shape. And so with a little bit of trimming, we have something that looks more like a timber tree. Other things to look for are suckers. This is actually a really nice looking tree. I like the way this one's growing. But as you can see down here, it's got a bunch of suckers coming up. And this is common with white poplars and walnuts and certain other trees like locusts. And so we'll have to trim all these back to the ground. You don't ever want to spray any herbicide on these. If you put Roundup on these, it will get sucked into the roots and kill your whole tree. So they have to be removed mechanically. Here's another one that's lost its leader. We've got two branches diverging at fairly sharp angles. They're pretty rigid and they're leaning away from the wind. So it's going to be really hard to train this one back. What I'm going to do with this one is actually cut it down low and just wait for a new leader to come up, and we'll train that one. And of course, if your tree decides to grow in a knot, well, I don't really think you should prune that. I think that's going to be a highly entertaining tree. I've never seen anything like that before. Here's an example of another tree that actually is doing pretty good. I wouldn't really do anything to this tree right now. The one thing I do want to mention is the lower branches. Typically, I'll let these grow until they get to be about 2 inches in diameter, and then we'll start slowly cutting them from the bottom up. But we don't want to cut all those lower limbs off because the tree is using those leaves to feed and grow. And so you want to have as much energy production as possible in this tree. But as it gets taller, we'll start removing lower limbs. All right, guys, hopefully that was helpful to you. Now, keep in mind, we are trimming these trees specifically to be veneer quality lumber in the future. There are different ways to prune trees. Now, if you're trying to produce for fruit or nut production, the trimming methods are different. If you're trying to produce an ornamental tree for your front yard, again, that's going to be different. Now, we do have lots of different types of trees in this orchard here. We have pecans, walnuts, hickories, we have persimmons, we have mulberries. We've got lots of different hardwoods, including oaks and black locust. But all of these trees are going to be pruned in a very similar manner so that we can produce that nice straight veneer quality log in the future. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave me a question or comment in the comment sections below. Hit subscribe if you like this type of content, and go ahead and check out projectogre.org if you'd like to visit our nonprofit.